Are you ready to talk about Ric Flair? I know how you hate talking about Rick. But
Woo! Hey, I did hear his energy drink is bombing.
oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. That's going to be fun to talk about. But Ric Flair made headlines again with his capitalizing of every single word style of tweeting, which, god damn, that's annoying. Anyway, a few weeks ago we talked about Ric Flair complaining that he wasn't interviewed on the WCW Who Killed WCW documentary, and to be honest, he had a point. I mean, he is Mr. WCW, him and Sting, basically. And I think we should maybe at some point review that documentary as well, because I'm not a fan of it. Because it's just revisionist history at this point. Anyway, it's not the point. Ric Flair Twitter moaning. June 10th, he posted this. I've tried to lay low on this, but let's face it, Who Killed WCW is a three-headed monster, and he blames Jim Herd, Eric Bischoff, and Vince Russo. There's no individual wrestler or faction that caused anything to kill WCW. It was the people in charge that created dysfunction, animosity, and tried to divide and conquer by lying to everyone and involving themselves in the promotion, which was the ultimate failure. God, I could give you 1,000 more examples. I am one to live through all three nightmares and to be saved by the WWE. Thank you to the WWE for bringing... Keep in mind, he's still signed with AEW here. WWE with bringing someone who was dead in the water as a result of these three people back to life. Then a couple of days later, I won't quote them both, put the quotes on the bottom or something like that so people can read them. But basically, 2 days later, he completely does an about turn, says, I spoke to Eric Bischoff, personally he's at peace, Vince Russo, he's at peace, hopefully so is Jim Herd, I will be, what's he talking about? Just wishing him out the luck, good luck, and then... He starts talking about how he unfairly judged Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo and inner workings and behind-the-scenes business, blah, blah, blah. I appreciate everything they did. And just totally within 2 days, he goes from I hate these three people to I love these three people.
He's bipolar, I guess. He gets the feeling one way one day, or his social media guy does. And he hates everybody, and they all killed it, and WWE saved him and all that, and he's all pissed off. And 2 days later, he comes out and saying, well, I misjudged... I don't get it. I don't get it. And capitalizing every word in a tweet, I don't think that's Rick. I think that's his social media guy. I really do. Because I don't know. Okay, so is he feuding now with Vince Russo and Jim Herd? Jim Herd don't give a crap.
He's still alive and he's like in his 90s, and
and he don't care. But you know what is missed in all this? Ric Flair took over the book one time in WCW. Right? Mm-hmm. Did it get any better?
It didn't get worse. I think originally when when Rick had the book, it was all right for a brief period, and then too much interference and he quit. But I think briefly when he was a booker, it wasn't bad, because you think he left a lot of the undercard booking to Sullivan and Cornette and some other people at that time.
Well, that's why, maybe.
Yeah.
Because they had to piece it together and make it make sense. But how long was he the head of booking?
Not long. I don't know if it was somewhere between like 89, 90 or something like that, but it wasn't a very long time.
Under a year, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I believe like Flair quit.
Just 7 or 8 months. No, I'll tell you why Flair quit. He had to go to the office. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to be Ric Flair, the damn limousine riding, damn drinking, guy that he was. And when he had responsibilities of actually having to go to an office and actually sit down and look at a piece of paper and say, well, what we got to do here, and we got to do this. And he didn't like that. So I think Cornette, and he picked the best two guys he could to put it together. That's why it got better. It didn't get better because of Rick. It got better because of the guys underneath booking and making it make sense.
Yeah, I think Eddie Gilbert might have been part of it at one point, and then Eddie and Rick had a falling out and Eddie quit. But there were people under Rick who was making most of the undercard decisions.
Well, that was Eddie's story. I'm not getting off Rick to get on to Eddie, but that was Eddie's story his whole career. He'd get a job, then he'd fall out with the owner or the whoever had it, and then he'd quit. He did it everywhere. He did it in Memphis. He did it. He went to Smoky Mountain, made one TV, and then left. And you know where he went?
Puerto Rico.
He went to Puerto Rico, and I didn't know he was going to do that. I thought he would give a notice or something. I wasn't even there. I was already in WWE by that time. But Flair, he took over the book, but I guarantee you he didn't book any. I bet he booked himself. And that's what Dusty used to do. Dusty used to book himself, and he would leave all the other card booking to J.J. Dillon. And Dusty, if he had the Road Warriors on top, well, all of a sudden in a tag match with somebody, well, he'd put himself in there, and it'd be a 6-man.
Rock and Roll, he did that with as well. So they would
rock and roll, and they all said that. So, I mean, Dusty he fit, but I've heard all the guys that he would do that too. Say he had nothing to do with the angle till when it come time for the big show, and then all of a sudden he was in the main event with them, which is actually it was good. It was good for Dusty, but I think it left some bad feelings on some of the other talent. But I mean, Dusty was over too, but he may have not done any work in the angle at all, but he would all of a sudden be in the 6-man.
I can't remember if I've ever asked you this before. No, we've talked about Jim Herd before. I know you sent him a threatening letter once because he promised you a start date, and we've told that story before.
Yes, I did. And I threatened to sue him if he didn't start me.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know why that scared him. Hey, I went to the lawyer and I told him the story. It was a lawyer I just saw on the street. I pulled in one day and I said, "Listen, I need some help here."
Was it like a panhandling lawyer?
Well, he had to just sign out in front of his office, and I went in there.
We'll litigate for food.
Yeah. And I told him the story, and I said, "Can I sue him?" He said, "Well, yeah, you can sue him." He said, "Why don't we send him a letter?" I said, "Okay." And then I said, what does it cost? And he says, $100. I said, "Man, come on. Huh? It's just a letter. Wow. What about 50? You know what he said? Okay, 50. I got the lawyer down on his own letter. All it was a letter, and he was going to sign it, and it was from a law firm. So he saw that, and I sent it to him, certified mail. Hey, that meant that I meant business, because if he had to sign for it, certified, there it is. So he saw legal action coming, and he was going to have to explain that to his higher ups that I got him sued. And it was, he did promise me a start date. Then he just reneged on it. So, but I made him give me a job, and I kept the job for 2 years.